Hello, John from Western Maine Defensive Tactics here again, and into the heart of the matter we go. Today we're going to talk about full tangs as they relate to Bowie and hard-use knives. Now, a full tang is usually the mark of a top quality knife. It's a selling point, and when done right, a full tang can be extremely rugged. A full length, full width, full thickness tang is a good thing to see on a knife. When given the proper heat treatment, they can be extremely rugged. There are some pitfalls to the full tang design, and in doing a few rehandles for customers, the one I've seen most often, the one that concerns me most often, is this black line represents a slot that has been milled in this tang. Relieving the tang to reduce weight with a couple of holes is not that big of a deal because you still have plenty of steel, plenty of material to support that handle and take abuse. But when you mill out a large slot, usually that's done to improve the balance and lighten the weight. When you do that, you really weaken this. The knives I've seen in a lot of cases have less steel in these two areas than a poorly made rat tail tang would have. And the problem with that is, to the customer or the person buying the knife, you think you have a full tang knife, and the knives that in question I'm talking about are mid-size outdoor knives. They're not huge, they're not big Bowies, they're, well-sized knives that you would think would be okay to go out and do some rugged work with. But that's just something to keep in mind. Now, another thing you want to bear in mind with a full tang is your handle material and the attachment. I like Corby bolts because they bolt right into the tang. They keep the handle material locked right into the tang. I also like circuit board standoffs and the hex cap screws, and I really like peening. I really like having the washer and the peen. This is just a thrower I made. I used basically washers and nails, and then the center one is a piece of brass rod. But peening's a really good way to keep a hard use knife in one piece. Bear in mind your attachment. If you'd have just plain pins, which are okay on a smaller knife, you start using that knife ruggedly, and sometimes when you pry or you're chopping, sometimes the blade will flex, and the bond between the handle scale, like let's say if it's got an epoxy bond, will kind of lift out a little bit, and you'll have to hammer the scales back in place. That's not a huge deal, but it's something you want to keep in mind. Always peen pins. Hey, peen pins hold up real well in good handle material. But when well done and well taken care of, a full tang knife can last for generations. I prefer to have a differential temper done on my full tang knives, whereas the edge is harder, the middle of the blade is springy, and the tang is spring tempered as well, or a little softer. This big disadvantage with a lot of people run into with a full tang knife is it will rust. That will rust on the edges. But if you're using your knife and you're taking care of it, it's not going to be that much of a problem for you. The only other thing I'd mention is a kind of a disadvantage, depending on what your purposes are for the knife, are balance. I can easier give a narrow tang knife finer balance than I can a full tang knife. That can be partially mitigated by tapering the tang. But still, I prefer to have a narrow tang knife for a few different purposes. We'll get into that in another video. But full tang knives can be extremely rugged, really reliable, as long as they're done right. Watch out for the pitfalls, i.e. over-relieving of the material in the steel underneath the handle, making weak stress risers when you're mounting the guard, and poor heat treatment. And usually full tangs are pretty foolproof. They're really rugged items. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.